The first time Grant Holloway looked at me like I had betrayed him, I was holding a cup of coffee and standing beside 12 red roses I hadn't asked for. Chicago looked almost colorless before sunrise. At 6:47 that morning, the sky beyond the glass walls of Holloway Holdings was the pale gray of old steel. Snow pressed against the windows in soft, restless bursts. Somewhere 40 floors below, a siren wailed through the empty streets, then faded. The executive floor was silent. Too silent. I liked it that way. For almost 3 years I had arrived before everyone else. Before the lawyers. Before the security teams. Before men in expensive suits began walking through those halls with voices lowered whenever Grant Holloway passed. I knew how he took his coffee. Black. No sugar. I knew which calls he ignored. Which names made his jaw tighten. Which meetings required me to remove every glass object from his office before they began. There were things you learned working for a man like Grant. You learned not to ask why 3 black SUVs sometimes waited downstairs at midnight. You learned that powerful men rarely raised their voices. And you learned that silence could be more dangerous than a threat. I set my coffee beside the keyboard. Then I saw the roses. 12 of them. Deep red. Fresh enough that tiny drops of water still clung to the petals. They sat in a black glass vase at the center of my desk. No delivery receipt. No florist card. Just a small white envelope tucked between the stems. My name was written across it. Audrey. My stomach tightened. I touched the envelope. Then the elevator opened. The sound was soft. A single chime. But my entire body went still. Grant Holloway stepped into the hallway. He wore the same black suit he'd left in 14 hours earlier. His white shirt was open at the collar. Snow melted slowly across the shoulders of his coat. 2 men followed him. Neither spoke. Grant looked exhausted. Not weak. Men like him didn't have the luxury of looking weak. Just colder than usual. He handed his gloves to one of the men and walked toward his office. Then he stopped. His eyes had found the roses. I had seen Grant look at men who lied to him. I had seen him discover millions of dollars missing from accounts. I had once watched him learn that someone inside his organization had sold information to a rival. He had shown less emotion then. His gaze moved from the flowers to me. Who sent those? His voice was quiet. I hated that my fingers tightened around the envelope. I don't know. Grant looked at my hand, then back at my face. You haven't opened it. It wasn't a question. No, why? I almost laughed. Grant Holloway had returned from whatever men like him did before dawn, and somehow the thing bothering him most was a bouquet on his secretary's desk. Because it's private. Something changed in his expression. Small. Almost invisible. But after 3 years I noticed everything. He stepped closer. The men behind him stopped walking. Grant didn't. He reached for the envelope. I moved first. My hand closed around it. His eyes lifted to mine. The hallway suddenly felt smaller. That doesn't belong to you, I said. Silence. One of the security men looked away. The other became intensely interested in the elevator doors. Grant stared at me. I could hear the ventilation system above us. The faint ticking of the clock behind my desk. My own heartbeat. I should have apologized. Instead, I slipped the envelope into my desk drawer and locked it. Grant watched me do it. Then his gaze returned to the roses. Cancel my 9 o'clock. You have 3 meetings before noon. Cancel them. He walked past me. At his office door he stopped. Audrey. I looked up. Yes. His hand rested on the door handle. Who has access to this floor before 7? The question made something cold move through my chest. Security. Maintenance. Senior staff. And delivery personnel? No. Grant looked at the roses again. This time there was no jealousy in his eyes. There was calculation. Don't touch them. The office door closed behind him. I stared at the flowers, then at the locked drawer. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. 1 message. I opened it. 3 words. He saw them. My breath stopped, because suddenly I understood something Grant didn't. The roses weren't a gift. They were a warning. And whoever had sent them already knew exactly when Grant Holloway would come home. The first lie I ever told Grant Holloway was that I didn't know who sent the roses. The second was pretending I wasn't terrified he would find out. By 8 o'clock, the executive floor had filled with voices, ringing phones, and the quiet machinery of powerful people pretending nothing could touch them. The roses were gone. Grant's security team had removed them 20 minutes after he entered his office. The message on my phone wasn't. He saw them. I had deleted it twice. First from my messages, then from the recently deleted folder. It didn't help. I could still see those 3 words every time I closed my eyes. Audrey. Grant's voice came through the intercom. I stood too quickly. My knee struck the underside of my desk. Pain shot through my leg. Coming. His office smelled like black coffee, leather, and the faint cold air that followed him everywhere in winter. Grant stood beside the windows. Chicago stretched beneath him. From 40 floors up, people looked small enough to control. Maybe that was why he liked the view. Seat. I prefer standing. His eyes moved to me. You're nervous. I'm busse. Those aren't the same thing. I crossed my arms. What do you need? Grant turned from the window. He placed a photograph on his desk. My breath caught. A man stood outside the building carrying the roses. Tall. Brown coat. Baseball cap pulled low. The image was blurry. But I knew him. Grant watched my face. Recognize him? No, the lie came faster this time. His expression didn't change. That was worse. He entered through the service entrance at 6:14. I said nothing. He knew which elevator didn't require executive clearance before 7. My mouth went dry. Grant stepped closer. He knew where you sit. Maybe he asked someone. He didn't. How do you know? Because I've already asked everyone. Of course he had. Grant Holloway could discover a missing shipment before the police knew it had disappeared. A man sending flowers to his secretary had no chance. Is this really necessary? Yes. Why? Silence. Grant looked at me for a long moment. Because someone entered my building. Without permission. Your building. Yes. Your elevators. Yes. Your security. His jaw tightened. I should have stopped. Instead, I asked the question that had been sitting between us since sunrise. Am I yours too? The room changed. Grant moved toward me. Slowly. He stopped close enough that I could see the exhaustion beneath his gray eyes. No, the answer surprised me. Then he continued. But anything that can be used against me becomes my concern. I laughed once. Quietly. So that's what I am? His eyes narrowed. A vulnerability? Audrey. Or an employee who forgot where the boundaries are? He said nothing. I hated that silence. Mostly because some part of me had wanted another answer. My phone vibrated inside my pocket. Once. I froze. Grant noticed. Take it out. No, his voice lowered. Who is contacting you? That isn't your business. Someone bypassed my security. And now you're bypassing my privacy. For the first time, anger flashed across his face. Not loud. Not uncontrolled. Grant's anger was colder than that. You're hiding something. I stepped toward the door. And you're proving exactly why. I left before he could stop me. My hand shook inside the elevator. The message was waiting. Thursday. 7 o'clock. Same place. I stared at it. Then another message appeared. Come alone. Across the street that evening, snow covered the sidewalk outside a small coffee shop. I sat beside the window. At exactly 7, a man entered. Brown coat. Baseball cap. The same man from Grant's photograph. He sat across from me. You shouldn't have sent the flowers, I whispered. I needed to know if they were watching you. They are now. He looked past me. His face suddenly went pale. Audrey. What? Don't turn around. My heartbeat stumbled. Across the street, behind the dark windows of a black sedan, Grant Holloway sat completely still, watching us. And for the first time, I realized the most dangerous man in Chicago wasn't looking at the stranger across from me like a threat to his organization. He was looking at him like a man who had touched something Grant had never admitted he wanted. There are questions powerful men ask because they want answers. Grant Holloway asked questions because he had already decided the truth belonged to him. I left the coffee shop through the back door. The man in the brown coat followed 3 minutes later. We didn't leave together. We never did. Chicago snow cut across the alley, sharp against my face as I walked toward the train station. My phone vibrated. Grant Holloway is following you. I stopped beneath a flickering streetlight. I typed quickly. I know. The reply came immediately. Then you're in more danger than I thought. A black sedan pulled to the curb. My stomach tightened. The rear window lowered. Grant sat inside. Get in. No, his expression didn't change. Audrey, I can take the train. The train isn't waiting. I should have walked away. Instead, I opened the door. Grant didn't speak for 6 blocks. The city moved past the windows in streaks of white and gold. I could feel his anger. Not loud. Not explosive. Contained. That was worse. Who is he? I looked outside. A friend. You don't meet friends through back doors. You don't follow employees after work. His jaw tightened. You gave him an envelope. You watched long enough to notice. I notice everything near me. There it is again. What? Near you. I turned toward him. You keep talking about people like they're territory. Grant's eyes met mine. People near me become targets. Then maybe you should stop pulling people close. Silence. The car stopped beneath Holloway Holdings. I stared at the building. I'm going home. No, I looked at him. Excuse me. We're going upstairs. You don't get to decide that. Grant leaned closer. I watched a man who bypassed my security meet you in secret. You lied about knowing him. You gave him something. Now you're receiving messages you won't explain. His voice dropped. You're going to tell me what's happening. And if I don't? His eyes hardened. Then I'll find out without you. 10 minutes later, we stood inside his office. The city burned beneath us. Grant removed his coat. I stayed near the door. Who is he? I can't tell you. Can't. Won't. He walked toward me. You work for me. You pay me. That's what working for someone means. No, my voice came out sharper than I intended. You pay for my time. Grant stopped. Not my life. Something moved behind his eyes. Anger. Maybe something else. You've spent 3 years knowing everything about me, I continued. My address. My schedule. My emergency contacts. Every person who enters this floor. Security requires it. But I know nothing about you. That keeps you safe. No, Grant. I swallowed. That keeps you in control. His face went still. I had crossed a line. We both knew it. Everything near me becomes my responsibility. I laughed quietly. That's the problem. He stepped closer. What problem? You think responsibility means ownership. The words landed between us. Grant didn't move. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked like someone had found a weapon he didn't know how to defend against. My phone vibrated. Grant's eyes dropped to my pocket. Answer it. No, Audrey. I took out the phone. Another message. The second delivery is tomorrow. My blood went cold. Grant watched my face. What does it say? Nothing. He reached for the phone. I stepped back. His hand closed around my wrist. Not painfully. Just enough to stop me. We both froze. Grant looked down at his hand, then released me immediately. Something almost like regret crossed his face. I won't force you, he said. I rubbed my wrist. Good. But understand something. His voice was quiet again. Dangerously quiet. If someone is using you to reach me, I will find them. And if this has nothing to do with you? Grant looked at me. For one long second, the mafia boss disappeared. There was only a man standing too close to a woman he couldn't control. That's what I'm afraid of. I left without answering. The next morning, I arrived at 6:42. 5 minutes earlier than usual. A new bouquet waited on my desk. White roses. One black envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were 2 words. He knows. Behind me the elevator chimed. Grant had arrived. Edit. The second bouquet was when I stopped wondering whether someone was watching me, and started wondering how long they had been inside Grant Holloway's world. The elevator doors opened. Grant stepped out. He saw the white roses. Then he saw me. Everything in his face changed. Not jealousy this time. Recognition. He crossed the floor without removing his coat. What did the card say? I folded the black envelope in my hand. Nothing. Grant stopped in front of me. Audrey. It was empty. His eyes dropped to my fingers. You're lying. I hated how easily he said it. Worse, I hated that he was right. Grant reached for the flowers. Don't. He looked at me. Why? 'Cause I was afraid. Because someone knew where I worked. When I arrived. When Grant arrived. Because the message said he knew. And I didn't know who he was. Yesterday you told me not to touch them. That was yesterday. He lifted one white rose carefully. Something small fell onto my desk. A black plastic square. Grant froze. He picked it up. What is that? A transmitter. My mouth went dry. He turned toward the security camera above the elevator. Locked the floor. The change was immediate. Doors closed. Elevators stopped. Men appeared from hallways I had never noticed before. Grant handed the device to one of them. Find out how long it's been active. The man disappeared. I grabbed my coat. Grant looked at me. Where are you going? Home. No. Y lauga. You don't get to do that. Someone placed surveillance equipment 3 feet from your chair. And your solution is what? Lock me inside. My solution is keeping you alive. I didn't ask you to. His expression hardened. That doesn't matter. There it was. The thing I had been trying to make him understand. You keep proving my point. What point? That you don't protect people, Grant. I stepped closer. You control them. His voice lowered. Control keeps people alive. No. Fear keeps people obedient. Silence. The security man returned. His face was pale. Mr. Holloway. Grant turned. The device transmitted directly into our internal network. Grant went still. Impossible. Someone gave it access. The room seemed colder. Who? We're checking. My phone vibrated. I looked down. Unknown number. Run. I looked toward the elevator. Grant saw my face. What happened? I stepped backward. Audrey. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the floor. Someone shouted. Glass shattered. Emergency lights flashed red. Grant reached me before I could move. His hand closed around my arm. Stay behind me. The elevator doors opened. Empty. Then the security alarm stopped. Every sound disappeared. Grant pulled me toward the emergency stairwell. His phone rang. He answered. Listen. His expression changed. What do you mean she's gone? My stomach dropped. Grant looked at me. Then toward my desk. My handbag was still there. My phone was in my hand. I didn't understand. Until he said the name. Where is Evelyn? Evelyn Carter. The night receptionist. The woman who had signed for both bouquets. No one answered. Grant ended the call. The truth about my past was never buried. It had been sitting 3 feet from Grant Holloway for almost 3 years, answering his calls and organizing his meetings. I left Holloway Holdings at 9:17 that morning. Not through the lobby. Grant had doubled security there. I used the service elevator. The same one the man with the roses had used. My hand shook as I pressed the basement button. Evelyn was inside my apartment. Or someone wanted me to believe she was. Either way, I couldn't risk Grant turning the city upside down before I knew the truth. The elevator doors opened. A man waited beside a gray sedan. Brown coat. Baseball cap. Ethan. He opened the passenger door. You shouldn't have come alone. You told me to. I didn't send that message. I stopped. What? His face was pale. I sent the flowers. My stomach tightened. The roses were supposed to warn me if anyone was watching you. Someone was. I know. Grant. Ethan looked at me. No, the word felt colder than the garage. Then who? He started the car. Get in. 20 minutes later, we were inside an abandoned apartment above a closed laundromat. Ethan locked 3 doors behind us. I watched him remove a folder from beneath the floorboards. You said you found something. I found him. Who? Our father. Forgot how to breathe. My father died when I was 9. No, Ethan placed a photograph on the table. A younger man stood beside two others. I recognized one immediately. Grant's father. The second man was Richard Holloway, Grant's uncle, the man who had raised him, the man who still sat beside Grant in every important meeting. The third man was my father. Why are they together? Because Dad worked for them. I stared at the photograph. No. He was their accountant. You're lying. He found records, payments, names, people who disappeared. My fingers went cold. He tried to leave. Ethan nodded. And then he vanished. The room became silent. I thought about my childhood, the police officers, my mother crying behind a closed bedroom door, the social worker who separated Ethan and me after she died. 20 years of believing our father had abandoned us. Why did you contact me now? Because someone opened his old files. Who? Ethan looked at me. You. My stomach dropped. 3 years earlier, I had applied for the executive secretary position at Holloway Holdings using my mother's maiden name, Audrey Bennett. I had told myself it was coincidence. A job, a salary, a way to rebuild my life. But 6 months ago, I found my father's name inside an archived financial record. I started searching. Quietly. You knew, I whispered. Ethan nodded. I've been watching you since. Then the flowers? A warning. About Grant. No, Ethan pushed another photograph toward me. It showed me entering Holloway Holdings. Behind me stood a man. Watching. Richard Holloway. He knows who you are. My phone rang. Grant. I declined the call. It rang again. Then Ethan's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen. His face changed. What? He showed me. A security image. Grant standing inside the executive elevator. Alone. Underneath it were 6 words. He is going to find her. My phone rang again. This time I answered. Grant didn't speak. I heard breathing. Then his voice. Your apartment is empty. I closed my eyes. Grant. Evelyn isn't there. I looked at Ethan. Where are you? I can't tell you. Silence. Then Grant said something that frightened me more than his anger ever had. I know your name isn't Audrey Bennett. My blood turned cold. Across the room Ethan slowly stood. Grant continued. I know who your father was. Grip the phone. How? His voice lowered. Because 20 years ago, my family made him disappear. The call ended. And for the first time I understood the real reason Grant Holloway had hired me. Maybe I hadn't entered his world by accident. Maybe he had been waiting for me. The most dangerous betrayal is not discovering your enemy lied to you. It is discovering the man you trusted was standing beside the truth the entire time. Grant found us 43 minutes later. No sirens. No police. Just 3 black vehicles stopping outside the laundromat. Ethan moved toward the window. He brought men. Of course he did. How did he find us? I looked at my phone. Grant had known my real name. My father. My past. At that point, the better question was what he didn't know. The door downstairs opened. Ethan reached inside his coat. Don't. You trust him. No footsteps climbed the stairs. But I know what happens when people point weapons at Grant Holloway. The door opened. Grant entered alone. Snow covered his shoulders. His eyes found me first. Then Ethan. Then the photographs on the table. You shouldn't be here, I said. Grant closed the door. You disappeared. I left. Without protection. Without permission, you mean? His jaw tightened. Ethan stepped between us. You knew who she was. Grant looked at him. Yes. The answer hurt more than I expected. I stared at Grant. How long? Before I hired you. The room became silent. 3 years. Every coffee. Every meeting. Every moment I believed I was invisible to him. You hired me because of my father. Yes. Why? Grant walked toward the table. He picked up the photograph. My father kept records. Of what? Everything. People who disappeared. Grant looked at me. Yes. My throat tightened. Was my father one of them? Grant didn't answer. Grant. I don't know. Ethan laughed bitterly. Convenient. Grant ignored him. My father died before I found the complete archive. And Richard. Grant's eyes changed. Small. Cold. He told me your father betrayed the organization. Did you believe him? Yes. The word cut through me. Then why hire me? Grant looked at me. Because Richard told me you were dead. I stopped breathing. Grant placed another photograph on the table. Me, 17 years old, leaving a foster home. Someone had written a date across the bottom. I found this after my father died. Ethan stared at it. Who took it? I don't know. I did. Not who, but why. Someone had been watching me long before I entered Holloway Holdings. Grant continued. I hired you to keep you where I could see you. My chest tightened. There it is again. What? Control. Audrey, you knew my life was connected to your family and you said nothing. I was trying to protect you. No.
Istapat kluze.
You were protecting yourself from the truth. Grant went still. Then Ethan's phone rang. He answered. No one spoke. A recording played. Evelyn's voice. Crying. Please. Then Richard Holloway spoke. Bring me the girl. The call ended. Grant's face became unreadable. Ethan whispered. Your uncle. Grant stared at the phone. No. You heard him. He raised me. He killed our father. You don't know that. I looked at Grant. And neither do you. That was the moment I saw it. Not fear. Something worse. Doubt. Grant Holloway could survive enemies. He could survive betrayal. But Richard wasn't just family. He was the man who had taught Grant how to become the person standing in front of me. Grant's phone vibrated. A message appeared. He read it. Then looked at me. What? His voice was quiet. Richard wants a meeting. Where? Grant turned toward the window. At my father's house. Ethan shook his head. It's a trap. Yes. You're still going? Grant looked at me. No, he placed his phone on the table. We are. I stared at him. You don't decide for me. I know. His answer surprised me. Grant stepped closer. For once I'm asking. Outside, engines waited in the snow. Inside, the most powerful man I knew stood in front of the woman he had spent 3 years secretly protecting. And for the first time, he wasn't trying to control what I did. He was afraid of what I would choose. The night Grant Holloway chose me over his empire, he didn't say he loved me. He simply destroyed the only world he had ever known. Grant's father's house stood outside Chicago behind iron gates and dead winter trees. No guard stopped us. That frightened me more. Grant drove. Ethan sat behind me. Neither man spoke. When we entered the house, Richard Holloway was waiting beside the fireplace. Evelyn sat across the room. Alive. Terrified. 2 men stood behind her. Richard smiled. Grant. Grant didn't answer. His eyes moved to Evelyn, then to me. Richard noticed. You always did have one weakness. I came for the truth. No, Richard poured himself a drink. You came for her. Grant's face remained still. Let Evelyn go. Give me Audrey. Ethan moved beside me. Grant didn't. Richard smiled again. Her father stole records that could destroy everything your family built. You killed him. I protected us. The words changed something in Grant. Not his expression. Something deeper. You told me he betrayed my father. He did. He tried to expose you. He tried to destroy your inheritance. Grant looked around the room. The portraits. The marble floors. The house where he had learned power meant survival. Then he looked at me. Where are the records? Richard laughed. You think this is about papers? He placed a folder on the table. Inside were photographs, names, bank accounts, judges, politicians, businesses, everything connected to the Holloway organization. If those files become public, Richard said, we lose everything. Grant remained silent. Give me the girl, Richard continued. I clean this up. Evelyn walks away. Ethan disappears somewhere safe. And Audrey. Richard looked at me. She becomes another unfortunate mistake. Grant stepped forward. The men behind Evelyn moved. Richard raised one hand. Think carefully. I have. Grant removed his phone. Richard's smile disappeared. What did you do? Grant placed the phone on the table. A timer counted down. 2:11, 2:10, 2:09. I sent copies of every financial record I found to 6 attorneys, 3 federal investigators, and 2 journalists. Richard stared at him. You destroyed us. No, Grant looked at me. I destroyed what we became because I was afraid to lose it. My breath caught. Richard's face twisted. For her. Grant turned toward him. No. His voice was quiet. For myself. The timer reached 0. Phones began ringing. Everywhere. Richard's. Grant's. The men behind Evelyn looked at each other. Sirens sounded far away. Then closer. Richard grabbed the folder. You think she stays after this? Grant said nothing. She came here because of your family. Still nothing. She'll leave you. Grant looked at me. I expected anger. Possession. The cold certainty that had followed him through every room. Instead I saw fear. And acceptance. That's her choice. Those 3 words broke something inside me. Because Grant Holloway had spent his entire life making sure no one could leave him. Tonight, he had burned his empire to give me the freedom to do exactly that. Ethan crossed the room and pulled Evelyn away. Richard stood alone beside the fire. The house filled with distant sirens. Grant walked toward me. He stopped several feet away. He didn't touch me. Didn't command me. Didn't ask me to stay. You're free, he said. I swallowed. From what? From my family. His eyes held mine. From me. I should have felt relief. Instead my chest hurt. Because the man standing in front of me had finally learned the difference between protecting someone and possessing them. And he had learned it at the exact moment he believed he was about to lose me. Outside, red and blue lights moved across the snow. Grant turned toward the door. I watched him walk away from his house. His name. His inheritance. Everything he had once believed made him powerful. And I realized the truth too late. The most powerful thing Grant Holloway had ever done wasn't keeping me. It was giving me a choice. And I still didn't know whether I was strong enough to make it. Leaving Grant Holloway was the hardest thing I ever did, because for the first time, he didn't try to stop me. Richard Holloway was arrested before sunrise. By noon, every news station in Chicago carried the Holloway name. Accounts were frozen. Offices were searched. Men who had spent years pretending not to know Grant suddenly remembered everything. Evelyn went home to her family. Ethan disappeared into protective custody. And Grant lost an empire in less than 48 hours. I saw him once during those 2 days. He stood outside the federal building beneath a gray winter sky. No security. No black cars. No men waiting for instructions. Just Grant. He looked smaller without the world moving around him. Not weak. Human. I walked toward him. He saw me. Neither of us spoke. You're free, he finally said. You already told me that. I wanted to make sure you believed me. I looked at him. What happens to you? Grant glanced toward the courthouse. Whatever happens. You could leave. So could you. There it was. The answer I had been waiting for. Not stay. Not come with me. Not you're mine. So could you? I swallowed. I am leaving. His face didn't change. But his hand tightened inside his coat pocket. Where? I don't know yet. He nodded. That sounds like freedom. I hated him for making it easier. I hated myself because I wanted him to make it impossible. Grant. Yes. Ask me to stay. The words escaped before I could stop them. He looked at me. For 1 second I saw everything he had spent his life hiding. Fear. Loneliness. Hope. Then he shook his head. No, my chest tightened. Why? Because if you stay because I ask, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering whether I controlled that too. I looked away. Snow fell between us. You finally learned. Yes. Too late. Grant's voice lowered. Probably. I left Chicago 3 days later. 6 months passed. I moved east. Found work. Changed apartments twice. Learned how quiet mornings could be when no one knew where I was. Grant never called. Never sent flowers. Never had anyone follow me. I checked. First every day. Then every week. Eventually I stopped. Ethan visited once. He told me Grant had testified against the remaining members of his organization. Holloway Holdings survived. Barely. Grant sold half the company, closed the private clubs, removed every business connected to the old network. He's changing, Ethan said. People don't change that easily. No, Ethan looked at me. But sometimes they spend every day trying. I returned to Chicago in December. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I needed closure. The city looked the same. Holloway Holdings didn't. The armed security was gone. The executive floor was brighter, quieter. I stepped out of the elevator at 6:47 in the morning. My old desk was empty. Grant stood inside his office. He had more gray in his hair. He looked tired, peaceful. He saw me through the glass. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he walked toward the door, stopped, and waited. He didn't tell me to come inside. Didn't ask why I had returned. Didn't reach for me. So I understood. Grant Holloway had finally become a man who could survive not knowing what I would choose. I looked at the empty desk, then at him, and I realized something I had spent 6 months trying to deny. Freedom hadn't taught me how to forget him. It had only taught me that if I ever returned, it would have to be because I wanted to. The next morning before Grant arrived, I placed one red rose on my old desk. No card, no warning, no secret. This time I wanted him to see it. The last rose Grant Holloway ever questioned was the first one I gave him freely. He arrived at 6:53, 6 minutes later than the man I remembered. I heard the elevator before I saw him. One soft chime, footsteps, then silence. Grant stood at the end of the hallway. His eyes found me, then the rose. He didn't move. For 3 years, I had watched Grant Holloway enter rooms and make everyone else uncomfortable with silence. That morning, I understood what it felt like to hold the silence instead. He walked toward my desk. Slowly. Who sent it? I smiled. I bought it. Grant looked at the rose. For who? You. His eyes lifted to mine. Something passed through them. Hope was too simple a word. Grant had trusted fear more than hope his entire life. Why? I stood. Because the first roses made you think someone was taking something from you. His jaw tightened. I remember. The second ones made us discover someone had been watching me. Yes. And this one doesn't mean either of those things. What does it mean? I looked at the man standing in front of me. 6 months earlier, he would have demanded an answer. Now he waited. That I came back. Grant said nothing. Not because you saved me. Still nothing. Not because I owe you. His breathing changed. Barely. But I noticed. I had always noticed. I came back because you finally gave me something no one in your world ever understood. What? A choice. The city slowly brightened beyond the windows. Grant looked toward his office, then at my old desk. I didn't keep the position open. I know. You're not getting your old job back. I laughed. Good. That surprised him. I hated your calendar. You organized it. Exactly. The corner of his mouth moved. Almost a smile. I had seen Grant angry, cold, dangerous, broken. That was the first time I saw him happy without being afraid of losing it. Can I ask you something? He said. You just did. Audrey. I smiled. Ask. He looked at me for a long moment. Will you stay? There it was. The question he had once been incapable of asking. No command. No threat. No promise. Just a question. I don't know. Pain crossed his face. I stepped closer. But I'd like to find out. Grant looked at me. How? Dinner. Tonight. Slow down. He almost smiled again. Tomorrow. I choose the restaurant. Fine. And no security team. His expression changed. One car. Grant. Across the street. No, half a block. I laughed. He stopped negotiating. All right. Look at you. Growing. Don't make me regret it. You won't. Grant reached toward me, then stopped. The movement was so small I almost missed it. He was asking without words. I closed the distance. My hand touched his. His fingers tightened around mine. Not enough to hold me. just enough to let me know he was there. I looked at the red rose between us. For months I had believed freedom meant distance. Grant had believed love meant possession. We were both wrong. Freedom was being able to leave. Love was having a reason to return. Grant Holloway once ruled an empire by making people afraid to walk away. He lost that empire. He lost his name's protection. He lost the certainty that everyone near him would remain there. And somehow, in losing everything he had used to control the world, he became someone worth choosing. He looked at me. Tomorrow at 7? Yes. I'll send a car. No, Audrey. I'll meet you. There. Grant was silent. Then he nodded. All right. I picked up the rose and handed it to him. He stared at it. What am I supposed to do with this? Keep it. His eyes met mine. I smiled. Not me. The rose. For the first time since I had known Grant Holloway, he laughed. Quietly. Almost like the sound surprised him. And that was how our story ended. Not with a mafia boss claiming the woman he loved. Not with a secretary surrendering to the most powerful man in the city. But with two people standing beside an empty desk at sunrise, finally understanding the difference between keeping someone and giving them a reason to stay. He had ruled the city. But in the end, the only thing I ever asked him to rule was himself.